Welcome to Christspiracy, the channel where we tackle misconceptions and uncover the truth about Christianity. Today, I wanted to make a pretty basic but absolutely necessary video on why you must go to church. A lot of people say, I believe in God, but I don't need church. That sounds reasonable until you compare it to how Christianity actually functions. In Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 through 25, it says, "Let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together, but encouraging one another." That's not optional language. Christianity assumes gathering. It assumes consistency. It assumes that your faith is lived out around other people, not just inside your own head. If your version of Christianity removes that, you're not refining it, you're replacing it. The question isn't whether you feel like going. The question is whether you're actually aligning your life with what the faith requires. Left on your own, your moral framework will drift. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, "Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God." If your mind isn't being actively renewed, it will be passively conformed. Culture doesn't need to argue with you. It just slowly shapes you. Over time, your standards adjust to what's convenient, what's popular, and what benefits you. Church interrupts that. It forces you to confront a standard that doesn't bend to your preferences. Without that, you don't just drift, you justify the drift. You start calling compromise growth and self-interest truth. Church acts as a reset point. It recalibrates your thinking so you're not consistently redefining right and wrong based on what you feel in the moment. Most people think that they can stay disciplined alone. They can't. Proverbs chapter 27 verse 17 says, "Iron sharpens iron, and one person sharpens the wits of another." That only happens through contact, friction, interaction. Isolation removes pressure, but it also removes growth. When no one sees your life, no one challenges it. You can say you're improving, but there's no external check. Church changes that. It puts you in a position where people actually know you. When people know you, they can confront you. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. You have blind spots you can't see on your own. Without accountability, your standards quietly drop and your excuses quietly grow. Church forces your life into the open, and that exposure is what makes real change possible. A lot of people think Christianity is about agreeing with the right ideas, but James chapter 1 verses 22 cuts through that saying, "Be doers of the word and not merely hearers who deceive themselves." Hearing truth without applying it isn't neutral, it's self-deception. Church exists to move you from belief to formation. It gives you structure, teaching, worship, service, repetition. Over time, those things shape how you actually live, not just what you claim to believe. If your habits aren't changing, your faith isn't forming you. It's just sitting at the surface. Church creates consistency, and consistency is what turns abstract belief into concrete action. Without that structure, your faith stays theoretical, and theoretical faith doesn't hold up under pressure. Everyone suffers. The question is whether your suffering has meaning or not. Romans chapter 5 verses 3 through 5 says, "We boast in our afflictions, knowing that affliction produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope." It takes pain and gives it direction. Without that, suffering feels random and pointless. With it, suffering becomes something that can shape you instead of destroy you. Church reinforces that perspective. It reminds you consistently that hardship isn't meaningless. It also surrounds you with people who can carry that weight with you. If you try to handle suffering alone, it will either harden you or break you. Church distributes that weight and places it in a context where it can actually produce something instead of just taking from you. People will say the church is full of hypocrites. That's true, but it's not a valid excuse. In Luke chapter 18 verses 9 through 14, Jesus tells a parable about a Pharisee who looks righteous on the outside and a tax collector who humbly repents. The point isn't that hypocrisy doesn't exist, it's that God sees through it. The presence of hypocrites doesn't invalidate the purpose of church. If anything, it proves that people need correction. Avoiding church because of hypocrites usually just means avoiding being examined yourself. People will also say, "I can follow God on my own." That sounds independent, but it ignores how easily people deceive themselves. Proverbs chapter 12 verse 15 says that fools think their own way is right, but the wise listen to advice. Left alone, your version of following God slowly becomes shaped by your preferences. Church puts you in a position where your thinking gets challenged. Without that, you're not being refined, you're being reinforced. Another common argument is, I don't feel anything when I go. That's not a strong argument. Faith isn't built on emotional consistency. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, it says, "Let us not grow weary in doing what is right, for we will reap at harvest time if we do not give up." The focus is on persistence, not feeling. If you only engage when you feel something, you'll never build anything stable. Growth comes from consistency, not emotional spikes. Another argument is, church has hurt people. That's real, and it should be taken seriously. But misuse and abuse doesn't cancel proper use. In Acts chapter 20, verses 28, leaders are warned to keep watch over the church of God. That implies responsibility and the possibility of failure. Bad leadership doesn't disprove the need for church. It proves the need for better leadership and discernment. Walking away entirely doesn't solve the problem, it just removes you from the structure that was meant to help you grow. At the core, this comes down to whether you're willing to submit to something outside yourself. Church forces that decision. It challenges your comfort, your independence, and your tendency to stay unexamined. Christianity was never meant to be lived alone. It calls you to show up, to be shaped, and to be held accountable. If you avoid that, you stay in control, but you also stay limited. If you're serious about growth, then it's not enough to believe. You must show up for God.